Welcome to the presentation. The talk is on the impacts of the June 9th, 1953 tornado on Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, and is called Devastation in Shrewsbury, the 1953 tornado's fury in photographs. I'm your host, Paul Brueggemann. The presentation is the culmination of approximately 6 months of research in the photos, finding newspaper articles, and conducting an eyewitness interview. A brief agenda is the following. We're going to go through an introduction, acknowledgement and dedications, some facts about the 1953 tornado in total as well as for Shrewsbury, a tornado timeline, newspaper headlines, a map of Shrewsbury's path of the tornado assembled from the photograph addresses, photographs by area, and a section I called Shrewsbury Rebuilds. Here is an image taken in the Main Street area of the current Route 290 ramps. Such a poignant photo illustrating the destruction and despair of the cleanup effort after the tornado. As an introduction, I'm a lifelong resident of Shrewsbury, a genealogist by trade. I do have a love of history and photography. And other projects I've been involved with in Shrewsbury is the history on Dean Park, a 1930s expansion of Boston Turnpike, documentation of all the veteran squares in town, as well as this talk on the 1953 tornado. I do want to note that I'm not a weather expert. For an acknowledgement and dedications, I'd like to acknowledge the head librarian at Shrewsbury Public Library, Priya, and to also dedicate the talk to the 11 individuals that lost their lives in Shrewsbury. Here is a side-by-side of facts on the tornado with complete tornado facts and those applying to Shrewsbury. The date was Tuesday, June 9th, 1953. The time was 4:20 and it lasted until 5:45 p.m. The path started near the Quabbin Reservoir in the Petersham area and dissipated near the Sudbury Reservoir in Framingham, traveling about 42 miles. The rating was an F4. That rating was upheld in 2004 with a width of the tornado was 200 to 1,200 yards. The wind speed was 208 to 260 miles per hour and had a total deaths of 94. And listed as the 20th deadliest U.S. tornado. Damage was 52 million, which is approximately 600 million in today's dollars. As far as news warnings, there wasn't much. The F5 tornado hit Flint, Michigan the day before, killing 116, listed as the 10th deadliest tornado. And a severe thunderstorm warning was issued on June 9th in Massachusetts. And the first New England tornado warning ever after the tornado dissipated. As far as Shrewsbury goes, it came into town about 5:18 p.m. and only lasted 12 minutes. The path started in the northwest side of town and narrowly missing the center of town. Total deaths was 11. Total damage was approximately 15 million, which is 172 million in today's dollars. 159 photos of 141 damaged buildings in town have been documented, but they say there's upwards to 408 buildings that were either damaged or destroyed. And I would consider this the largest natural disaster in town's history. On a more technical side, here's a comparison of the old and new Fujita scale and 4 well-known photographs taken by Rita Canny in Rutland, Stanley Smith in Holden, Henry LaPrade in Shrewsbury, and a Shrewsbury image owned by the National Weather Service in Taunton, and the last known photo of the storm. The tornado was rated on the old scale as an F4 and was the deadliest tornado to ever hit New England. Some contend it was an F5, but was re-rated as an F4. Based on a Museum of Worcester timeline, I summarized the information into this slide in a line in the Times with how many deaths occurred in each town. As you can see, Holden, Worcester, Shrewsbury had the most deaths. It was in Holden for 18 minutes. It was in Worcester only for 10 minutes. And it was in Shrewsbury for 12 minutes. Here is that detailed timeline from the old Worcester Historical Museum, now known as the Museum of Worcester. The Worcester Public Library has a collection on the tornado and found a few interesting documents and publications. Here is one from the New England Fire Insurance Rating Association. There was actually many tornadoes that day. At 5:30 p.m., another tornado started at northeastern part of Sutton, which was a possible offshoot. It ran for 28 miles and dissipated in 6:37 p.m. But other tornadoes struck Exeter, New Hampshire, and Rollinsford, New Hampshire as well. Another interesting publication at the library was this National Academy of Sciences study. According to the study, 9,000 individuals were impacted by the tornado. Out of a study, only 28% saw the funnel and recognized it as a tornado. And 78% recognized some warning cue before personal impact. It did reaffirm that the community at large had no warning of the tornado. The velocity of the wind in the outer ring was very high. And I do want to point out that many state that the real culprit of the damage was not the wind, it was the air pressure. The air pressure in the inner core was extremely low, and many houses exploded from the pressure upward and outward. And some describe the floating effect on objects. Here's a couple of examples of the newspaper headlines that came out the next day. The Worcester Telegram, only hours after the tornado, reported the death toll at being at 73. And that evening, 87 had been killed, 800 injured in the city's worst disaster. So the death toll increased very quickly. Now on to the photo collection. There's a photo collection located on the second floor reading room of the Shrewsbury Public Library. It's a 3-volume collection with 159 photographs of the Shrewsbury aftermath. The photographs were taken by the Shrewsbury Police Department and stamped photo by Woolner. The collection is organized by street with handwritten addresses on the reverse side, and special permission was granted to scan the photographs. The collection was scanned and organized in the summer of 2024. It is believed that the collection is incomplete as there were over 400 buildings damaged by the tornado in Shrewsbury. A list was supposedly created by the postmaster, but I have not yet to find that list. Here's a sample photograph, the front and back of each of the 159 images are very much similar. The front shows the damage itself. This is the previously shown photograph. And the back states 81 West Main Street with a code of 1A-6. And a description, wreckage from Mary Woods blown across the street to Balloonist. And Balloonist, I believe, was her neighbor's last name. All stamped with photo by Woolner and stamped with Shrewsbury Police Department. This slide illustrates how I took a house inventory of all the addresses of the photographs and mapped them in Google My Maps. So the spreadsheet on the left is the house inventory. Put every fact that was on the back of the photographs into a spreadsheet. And from that spreadsheet, I was able to import them into Google My Maps, illustrating the path of the tornado. Here is a map of the Shrewsbury tornado path as documented by the 159 photographs. As you can see in the upper left-hand corner, tornado path did damage in Great Brook Valley and skirted the Booth apartment area and came over Lake Quinsigamon into the area, um, the northwest area of Shrewsbury. Route 290 did not exist at that point in time. So the on-ramps of Route 290 didn't exist. And it was a pretty open area. One thing that I was always trying to document was where was the path of the tornado from this area till it actually happened, occurred at the St. John's football field area. So as you can see, this area of town at the time was pretty unpopulated until it hit this area, Main Street. And then it sort of made a slight turn and sort of avoided Shrewsbury Center area or closer to Shrewsbury Center area and caused a great deal of damage in the Maple Ave area, as well as heading towards Lake Street and Grafton Street of Shrewsbury. Continued on and met South Street and Route 9, that area. Did a lot of damage in the South Street area to some of the farms, and ultimately ended up heading towards the Broken Creek Vineyard and Winery area and out towards Westboro, Mass. At that point. So as stated before, 12 minutes, the tornado was traveling 40 to 45 miles an hour. And you can see from the photographs, at least half of what I'm attesting is half of the damage that occurred in town. Most of that damage was documented in this area, but there was a good amount when it first hit Shrewsbury as well and throughout the town. One of the documents in the Worcester Public Library collection was from the New England Fire Insurance Rating Association. And what they had were maps of every one of the towns affected by the tornado. So here is the map of Shrewsbury. Dotted lines is the limit of the damage that occurred by the tornado. And the center of the tornado is notated by these arrows. The map that came from the photographs documenting the path of the tornado was very similar. It started in the upper northwest part of town and headed to the southeast part of town, hitting the Lake Quinsigamon area, hitting an unpopulated area of town, and then right before the St. John's football field, hitting some areas there, crossing Main Street around the St. John's area. St. John's was not there at the time. Narrowly missing the Manor House, where it had some damage at the Manor House, but it was pretty minimal. And then did damage at the Brewer Mansion, which was on the Maple Ave side, which is now the location of the soccer fields on Maple Ave. And then headed across Maple Ave and hit a very populated area in that area, which the papers was calling the Flats of Shrewsbury, and headed towards Lake Ave of Shrewsbury, Grafton Street intersection, and then heading down towards South Street area, and then crossing Route 20, and then crossing towards Green Street, South Street, and heading out of town towards Westboro. The tornado path led to 5 logical groupings of damages in the town. Note that there are a lot of photos in the collection. I'll have brief comments when a new street is noted, or if there's something in the photo that I want to mention. Each area has a focus map and ends with an interview or article pertaining to each area. The 5 areas are the following. Area 1, which is the Lake Quinsigamon area. Area 2, which is the rifle range area around St. John's football field. Area 3 is the Flats area, consisting of Maple Ave, Crescent Street, etc. Area 4 is the Grafton Street area. and Area 5 is the South Street area. Here's a map of the Area 1, Lake Quinsigamond area, Shirley Road, Holden Street, North Quinsigamond Ave, and Main Street. Tornado hit approximately 5:18 p.m. in this area. And just a little note, Route 290, as I mentioned before, was not in the area. Some of the streets, Shirley Road and other streets, actually used to hit Main Street directly. And those were cut off with the creation of Route 290 in the 1950s, 60s. Here are the first photographs of the Shirley Road area, number 9, number 17. They're all organized by road and the address by road as well. Number 23 and number 27, Shirley Road. Number 31 and number 39, Shirley Road. Number 41, number 43, Shirley Road. Number 45 and number 51, Shirley Road. And just note the lack of Route 290 and also the Green Hill golf course in the background of this photograph here. Number 54, Shirley Road. Here are the first photographs of Holden Street. Number 12, Holden Street, and number 69, Holden Street. Here is number 70, Holden Street. Here are some pictures of North Quinsigamond Avenue with a lake in the background. Number 321 North Quinsigamond Ave and 323 North Quinsigamond Ave. You can see the view of Lincoln Street heading out of Shrewsbury at the time. And once again, there was really the lack of Route 290, so there's no visibility of that highway, so the roads do look very different. Here is a view of 325 North Quincy and 333 North Quincy with a lake in the background. Here are the first photographs of West Main Street, 325 West Main and 333 West Main. I do want to note that the first 2 deaths that occurred were at the location of 333 Main Street, and supposedly the house got entirely blown into Lake Quinsigamond. Took them about a day to find the Dailies. It was a husband and wife that sadly passed away during the tornado, and the first deaths that occurred in town. Here's a couple views of 78 and 79 West Main Street. And a lot of these houses never got rebuilt because of Route 290 road takings, as well as the open lot that exists across West Main Street. Here's a view of 81 West Main Street in the photo that was shown previously, and 104 West Main Street. Here's the first eyewitness article from Area 1 in the Worcester Telegram on June 14th, 1953. In summary, it states the crumbled home of Walter Ballounis, 81 Main Street, is on the mend with the help of his co-workers from Morgan Construction. On a deserted stretch of road, Edna Barrett Woods, 78 Main Street, digs in a massive pile of rubble. Her house once stood about 40 feet across the street. The Daly family lived there. She says that Lawrence Daly and his wife were in the house when it went into the lake. Their daughter Mary, ordinarily home at the time, had missed her bus. Their bodies were found 24 hours later. Here is Area 2. Um, Tornado hit approximately 5:20 in this area. Consisted of the rifle range area and Monadnock Road. Here's the Pioneer Field, and then St. John's is across the street in this area. I think the tornado actually hit close to the main street in this area and skirted, took more of a drastic right-hand turn because the manor house is located in this general area of St. John's. Here are the photographs of 361 West Main Street, as well as number 7 Monadnock Road. The house in West Main Street was actually a home that was located at the shooting range on the other side of the right-hand side of Pioneer Field. Here's the Area 2 eyewitness article in the Worcester Telegram on June 12, 1953. Definitely a scene straight out of the Twister movie. Walter Cosgrove, he was a golf pro at Green Hill Golf Club, and his friend John Flaherty, who was a basketball coach at St. Stephen's High, and 4 youngsters had a ride of their lives. Cosgrove owned the driving range at the current location at St. John's Fields, saw the tornado coming and had no shelter. They decided to head in his car and barely outran the tornado by traveling towards Shrewsbury Center. Must have been an amazing ride. This slide is an Area 2 eyewitness account, and I had the fortunate opportunity to interview Mr. Robert Claflin on November 8th in 2024. He stated, as a 15-year-old, he witnessed the tornado coming towards his 20-acre home at 307 Main Street. He took cover in the basement, and all his family members survived. He confirmed the tornado hit an unpopulated area from Shirley Road area until it hit the back of the barn at 285 Main Street next door. The tornado ran about 2 football lengths north of Main Street, and Lunger and Janitas was not hit as a result. Ireta Road at the time was not as long, and there was damages to houses being built at the time. The tornado damaged his home's roof and trees and destroyed his barn 30 feet behind his house. The barn at the time contained a 1916 Payless car just completed with a 7-year restoration, a 1936 Chevy purchased the day before. 20 chickens were missing, 10 sheep and a pony disappeared but survived. He confirmed that the tornado turned at Monadnock Road after damaging the Murphy's house at the Worcester Rifle Range and slight damage to the manor house on St. John's property. The manor house was actually part of the Brewer estate. It was purchased by St. John's in the late 50s. The rifle range was used by the National Guard and Worcester Police and contained a few halls, ski range, and target ranges. And he did confirm that the Cosgrove's driving range was next door. It opened in June of 1952, and he actually worked there from 1953 to 1957. Here's a slide of Area 3, the tornado path. The tornado would have hit around 5:22 p.m. in this area. As you can see from the area map, it's starting to hit a very populated area of town. Maple Ave is this area. The town hall is here, and of course the town hall was not there at the time of the tornado. The Brewer Mansion was in this area, and the deaths did occur. 2 deaths occurred at the Brewer Mansion area. And you can see that it's sort of sliced this way, the tornado. And Area 3 consisted of the flats area, as mentioned before, Maple Ave, Crescent Street, St. James Road, Hapgood Way, Monroe Street, Maple Circle, and Brightside Avenue. I just want to point out that the distance of this area, I was able to measure the tornado in a couple areas of town, and it was about a third of the mile wide at that point. There's been some claims that the tornado got upwards to a half mile to a mile wide in some locations. But you were able to measure from, this area what the distance was. Some had stated that from Crescent Street all the way up to the post office, there was some damage from the tornado. That just, to me, it sounds a little wide, but it's unsubstantiated until we get the complete map of the 408 buildings damaged in town. So it could have been. I just haven't seen that documented with the photos I had. These are the first photos of Maple Avenue. Pretty good photo looking west on Maple Avenue. The right-hand side of that photograph would have is actually the current location of the new police station in town. You can see they're working on the lines and everything else with this photograph looking west. The damage on the right is 150 Maple Ave and part of the Brewer Mansion estate, if you will. And as mentioned previously, 2 deaths occurred at this location. This is 101 Maple Avenue and 105 Maple Avenue. This is 111 Maple Avenue and 113 Maple Avenue. And 1 death occurred at this location at 113 Maple Avenue, the photograph on the right. This is 115 Maple Avenue and 121 Maple Avenue. (125) and 129 Maple Avenue. This one's a photograph of 139 Maple Avenue. Here is the area of Crescent Street, number 3 Crescent Street and number 5 Crescent Street. Note that some of these houses were probably rebuilt. The original footprint, they're fixed. So it's unclear to me if they were a total loss or not a total loss. Some of these homes obviously were. Some were not. So I think some of them actually still remain and look familiar to the area. This is number 9 and number 11 Crescent Street. Number 12 and number 15 Crescent Street. This is number 19 and number 20 Crescent Street. This is number 21 and 25 Crescent Street. And this is number 30 Crescent Street. The one thing I want to point out about the home, it probably illustrates very well the bowing effect of the pressure. As mentioned before, the pressure outside was extremely low, causing the house to sort of push outward, if you will. Some exploding and imploding, if you will. Some just moving off their foundations. This one is a good illustration of that bowing effect. We're now moving on to St. James Road. Here's number 7 and number 8 St. James Road. Here is number 9 and number 10 St. James Road. Here is number 11 and number 15 St. James Road. Here is number 16 and number 17 St. James Road. Here's number 18 and number 19 St. James Road. Note the nice looking Cadillac in front of 18 James Road. Here is number 20 and 23 St. James Road. Here is number 24 and 25 St. James Road. Here is 26 and 27 St. James Road. I think this one is a clear indication of how random tornadoes are. One house, essentially heavy roof damage on the left, and the one on the right completely gone. Here is number 28 and 29 St. James Road. Here is number 30 and 31 St. James Road. Number 32 and number 33 St. James Road. Here is number 34 St. James Road. The next street to be impacted was Hapgood Way. Here's number 7 and number 8 Hapgood Way. Here is number 9 and number 10 Hapgood Way. Here is number 11 and number 14 Hapgood Way. Here is number 15 and number 16 Hapgood Way. And note the Wilson and Rand truck in front of number 15 Hapgood Way. Here is number 17 and number 18 Hapgood Way. And here is the last house on Hapgood Way, number 20. The next impacted street in Area 3 was Monroe Street. Here are photos of number 8 Monroe and number 9 Monroe. Here's number 10 Monroe Street, number 11 Monroe Street. Here is number 12 and number 15 Monroe Street. Here is number 20 and number 24 Maple Circle. Here is number 25 and 28 Maple Circle. Here is number 32 Maple Circle and number 34 Maple Circle. The next impacted street was Brightside Avenue. Here's number 7 Brightside Avenue and number 9 Brightside Avenue. Here is number 10 and 13 Brightside Avenue. And here is number 14 Brightside Avenue. This is the Area 3 eyewitness article from the Worcester Telegram, June 10th, 1953. The article describes how John D.D. Jr. of 16 Hapgood Way made it home to his wife and baby. He ran from the foot of Shrewsbury Hill to his home to find it in ruins. Wife and baby were injured and found down the street. A 250-yard path through town. Cars were strewn 100 yards. No chimneys or trees were left standing. Sticks were driven 6 inches deep into one wall, and every window casing was ripped out. And he also describes pages ripped out of books from his bookshelf. But with all this damage, he states, we are together. We start again in the morning to rebuild the effort of years, wiped out in a few minutes. Area 4 of the Shrewsbury tornado started at approximately 5:24 p.m. It was the Grafton Street area, consisting of Edgewood Road, Kenilworth Road, Fencroft Road, Glen Terrace, Lake Street, and Grafton Street. This map shows the damage that occurred in those areas. Here's Lake Street, and here's Grafton Street. The first photos from this area are Edgewood Road. Here's number 34 Edgewood and number 40 Edgewood Road. Here's number 50 and 56 Edgewood Road. Here's number 60 Edgewood Road. Here's the only photo from Kenilworth Road, number 37. Now we start on Ferncroft Road. Here's number 9 Ferncroft and number 11 Ferncroft. Here's Glen Terrace, number 6 Glen Terrace and number 8 Glen Terrace. Here's number 10 Glen Terrace and number 12 Glen Terrace. Here are a few Lake Street photos, number 24 Lake Street, number 27 Lake Street. And just note at number 24 Lake Street, one life was lost at that location. Here's number 30 and number 31 Lake Street. We're now into the Grafton Street damage. Here is number 164 Grafton Street, 171 Grafton Street. 164 is pretty familiar looking. That's the house at the corner of Lake Street and Grafton Street at the lights. Here is damage at 172 Grafton Street and 180 Grafton Street. Here are photos from 186 Grafton Street and 195 Grafton Street. And here are the last photos from Grafton Street, number 200 Grafton Street and number 217 Grafton Street. Here is the Area 4 eyewitness article from the Worcester Telegram, June 12, 1953, In summary, the article describes the union meeting five individuals had at the home of Herbert Olson, 24 Lake Street. Killed in the wreckage was union leader Stanley Manning. Heard a noise that sounded like a jet plane and instinctively knew it was a tornado. Two of them ran to the backyard to chase down an umbrella. Two went to the basement and described the sound like a swish that sounded like the noise when you stick a can opener into a vacuum-packed can of coffee. Here is Area 5 of the Shrewsbury tornado, hit at approximately 5:26 p.m. The area map on the left shows the area of Route 9, Route 20, and the South Street area right here. Marked in red once again is the location of some of the deaths that occurred. But the South Street area is a combination of Boston Turnpike, South Street, Chestnut Street, Hartford Turnpike, and Green Street. Here's a few photographs of Boston Turnpike, 701 Boston Turnpike and 715 Boston Turnpike. This photo is a good wide view taken from Route 9 looking towards South Street. So this is the Route 9 area, and this is South Street heading up the hill here to the farms area that were up the top and the sides. Supposedly the Moors, which was located in this area, was very heavily damaged. Here's the last photo of Boston Turnpike, number 718 Boston Turnpike. Here are the first photos of South Street, number 271 South Street and 274 South Street. Here is 318 South Street and 321 South Street, and a death occurred at the location of 321 South Street. Here's 335 South Street and 385 South Street, and a death occurred at the location of 335 South Street. Here is 409 South Street and 507 South Street. Here is 600 South Street and 630 South Street. Here is the only photograph of Chestnut Street with no address number. Here is the only photograph of Hartford Turnpike, Route 20, number 759. Used to be a gas station at the location, the bottom of South Street, as it meets Route 20. And sadly, 3 people got killed in front of this location. It was a mother, father, and daughter returning from a dinner, heading down Route 20 when their car got struck. The area of South Street and Route 20, I mean, oddly, that very small area had half the amount of deaths in the town. It got struck pretty hard, and you could see the damage is pretty devastating. Here's the only photograph of Green Street, number 33 Green Street, and actually the location where Green Street meets Route 20, approximately where the new development is going to happen. Used to be a farm there. That's the end of the photo collection, and here is an Area 5 eyewitness article from the Evening Gazette on June 11th, 1953, and it's titled "Shrewsbury Digs In to Build Up Again." The article describes the loss of a relative in farmhouses, barns on Raymond Fuller's farm on South Street. Raymond was sore in body, but his attitude showed this time was no time to give up. Civilian units, police, fire, and military groups kept traffic going all day, Damaged cars were towed to Lovey's garage on Route 9. New England Telephone Company restored phone service to the center of town. And this was a couple days after the tornado. At police headquarters, Civil Defense set up a registration of all services offered to individuals needing assistance. Walter G. Thomas from the Civil Defense assisted even with injuries. His car was demolished when it rolled over several times near the Worcester Foundation for Biology. And it also states a load of mattresses, cots, blankets, medical supplies, and food arrived by plane at Worcester Airport. We're now in a section of the presentation I call Shrewsbury Rebuilds. Here is an Evening Gazette photograph published the day after the tornado on 6/10/1953, titled "The Elements Stripped Maple Ave, Shrewsbury as Completely as the Horror of War." You can just see people wandering up and down the middle of Maple Ave, just assessing damage. It's a pretty sad photograph. Here's a photo from the Worcester Public Library tornado collection of a workman saw a tree into sections on Maple Avenue. Here's another photo from the Evening Gazette, June 15th, 1953, of Robert Sowers of 21 Maple Circle, entitled "Shrewsbury Cottage Has Stairway to the Sky." Here's another photo from the Evening Gazette, June 11th, 1953. Cableman Walter J. Hall, Jr. at Maple Avenue. He tests the lines in Shrewsbury. This is an Evening Gazette photo from June 10th, 1953, the day after the tornado, of Mrs. Stephen D. Donahue aided in clothing salvage at 8 Hapgood Way. Shrewsbury residents felled by storm's fury. There's no better cartoonist than Al Banks. Here's the Sunday Telegram of June 14th, 1953. "This is our home, Worcester fights back," much like the flag raising at Iwo Jima. Pretty revealing cartoon for the times. Definitely my favorite. Here's a few articles in Shrewsbury Rebuilds. This one from the day after the tornado, June 10th, 1953, from the Worcester Telegram. In summary, there was a military rule invoked at Shrewsbury at 1 a.m. Inbound traffic was prohibited. First aid was set up at Patton School and Grange Hall, and the First Congregational Church set up care for the children. Mobile power from Boston arrived at the Worcester Foundation, and shelter at Patton and the Frosian Club was there. And the high school graduation was postponed. Here's another photograph from the Worcester Telegram, June 12, 1953. 3 days after the tornado, the photo view is up South Street from Route 9 Boston Turnpike, and the twisted steel post formerly held a billboard. The home on the left is actually the South Street entrance to CVS location. Here's another article from the Evening Gazette, June 12, 1953. In summary, 200 Shrewsbury homes lost and $10 million of federal aid needed for the damage. Personal property was not included. 200 homes at $15K each. List of homes was assembled by the postmaster, Edward C. Maroney. Estimate for the buildings, homes, water system, light department, police, and fire departments. That estimate went up to $15 million in later days. Here's another article from the Worcester Telegram, June 10, 1953. The Brewer Mansion and many homes in the neighborhood opened their doors for families affected. The Congregational Church opened the church to all who needed housing or any aid. The vicinity of the moors was heavily damaged by the tornado. Here's another Worcester Telegram article from June 12, 1953, titled "Now the Name of Shrewsbury is Synonymous with Stark Disaster." Mrs. Frank Halpin, 19 Crescent Street, describes hearing the tornado and taking action with her husband. They went to close the garage doors and windows when the whole house crumbled. She was in the staircase when it moved 100 feet into the backyard. Here's another Worcester Telegram article from June 12, 1953, where it describes the Red Cross set up at Patton School. Substations for assistance were also set up at 150 Grafton Street, 9 St. James Street, North Quinsigamond Ave, and West Main Street. There was an 8 p.m. curfew, and the National Guard patrolling disaster areas. This article from the Worcester Telegram, June 13, 1953, describes another 3 tons of supplies landed in Worcester from Manchester, New Hampshire. Within 30 minutes, the supplies were en route to Patton School, the town hall, and fire stations where the disaster victims have been staying. Here's a photo from the Evening Gazette, June 10, 1953. A photo verifying that the clock stopped at Patton School at 5:21 p.m. Also, the American Red Cross set up in the cafeteria. The photo contains a photo of Paul Little of Shrewsbury and Miss Basselier of Worcester, who was a teacher there. And he was the head chapter chairman of the American Red Cross that set up at Patton School. So this was the telegram of June 14, 1953, just illustrates a column that appeared in the newspaper called Tornado Tossins. It was really the tornado news of the day, 5 days after the tornado. Here's a photograph from Worcester Telegram, June 13, 1953. In summary, the ham radio operators set up mobile units and permanent stations. The headquarters was in Worcester in the attic over the Red Cross chapter house, which is over near Lincoln Square in Worcester. A permanent station was set up at Patton School to relay messages. This article from the Worcester Telegram, June 16, 1953, summarizes how the selectmen revised the damage at $15 million. 208 homes were demolished and 200 damaged, and 100 homeless families in Shrewsbury. All roads in Shrewsbury are now open, which is remarkable given that it was a week after the tornado. Roads will be patrolled and guarded for some time. They now have more donated clothing than can be used, and 100 residents at the time are still hospitalized. Note that the 1950 population of Shrewsbury was 10,594. Here's an Evening Gazette article from October 6, 1953. It really describes some of the long-term effects of what happened with the tornado. But there were 60 Worcester County farmers that were impacted by the tornado. Farms, unfortunately, were classified as business and not eligible for certain forms of relief. John Hurley in Shrewsbury ran a farm for his mother, Mrs. James Hurley, which was destroyed. He had to sell the cows as there was no place to put them. And Stuart H. Allen, South Street, may turn to carpentry for a time. Lack of shelter will result in the sale of his remaining 20 cows. So it's probably a nail in the coffin for some of the farmers in Shrewsbury, unfortunately. If you ever have the opportunity, there's a tornado memorial at Quinsigamond Community College. to the memory of those who died in the June 9th, 1953 tornado. And here is a blow-up of listing the 11 Shrewsbury deaths. Ruth Carlson of Northborough, Lawrence Daly, Nora Daly, Maureen Fisher, Barbara Hayden, Celia Howe of Worcester, Thomas Howe of Worcester, Ethel McDonald, Stanley Manning of Worcester, Nora Fuller of Stoneham, and Catherine O'Hurd. That's the end of the presentation. I want to thank my wife Janine for finding the photo collection at the Shrewsbury Public Library. Hope you found the photos pretty interesting, very revealing. Destruction was incredible in town. If you want to do some additional reading on the tornado, obviously the definitive book on the tornado is Tornado 84 Minutes, 94 Lives by John M. O'Toole. It was published in the 90s. It's definitely a must read if you're interested in the tornado history across central Mass. And if you have any questions or you want to share any information, please email me. I'm pfb.genealogy@gmail.com. And thanks for watching, everybody. Appreciate your time. Take care.